All right. Hello, everyone. This is Katy Gostaspi, and welcome to the Katy G podcast series. The mission of my podcast is for us to realize that we're all great and we can even be greater. And most importantly, how can we bring this greatness to the world through our brand expression and who we are? So why the Katy G podcasts? Well, two reasons, as I always say. I truly care about humanity at a very deep level, and I want us all to see how great we are to really be happier and more successful. And number two, I'm just like you. I struggle with my own feelings of being less than, and just like everyone else, some days are good, some days are just ugly. So I learn just like you learn, and we have fantastic guests that give us their time and grace us with their presence and their education. And today is absolutely no exception whatsoever. I know my guests can always do a better introduction of themselves, but I'm going to take a stab at this. Today we have Sandro Forte with us, Sandro Forte, and he'll say his name so much better than I could ever say with such fervor and zest. But a friend of mine from the past, and it's so amazing how life has people's paths cross again and again. But anyways, we can talk about that in a minute. Sandro is a highly respected and successful businessman who truly has built an astonishing network of well-known individuals, sports stars, and celebrities over 30 years as he's developed and owned a successful wealth management practice, Forte Financial Group. And he's become an authority on personal development and peak performance, and has developed his own suite of successful master classes. And get this, delivered to 300,000 clients across the UK and overseas. And he's had a career spanning over 30 years, which is brilliant because when you see him, he looks like he's about 25, in my opinion. So go figure. That's more of a woman thing, I suppose. And he's the best-selling author of the book Dare to Be Different, and a sought-after speaker. And then he's also a fellow of the Professional Speakers Association. You can see where my mind is in my old securities world, as well as a certified speaking professional, a CSP, which is a designation as professional public speakers we can hold and through the National Speakers Association. So thank you so much for being with me today, Sandro. I hope I gave you a decent introduction that did you justice.
You absolutely did, Katy. I'm delighted to join you, and thank you so much. Although I have to freely confess at this juncture that I feel a bit of a fraud because you've introduced your former guests as great, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, inspiring. I can only assume that all your other invitees had to turn you down and you just got left with me. So I'm sorry if I'm a bit of an imposter in the previous list of astonishing guests you've had, but thank you for having me nevertheless.
No, you're humble, if nothing else, and you're certainly not an imposter, and you just fit the bill like all my other guests. And again, I thank you for your time. And so, Sandro, you're over the pond, as you guys say, huh?
It's a big pond, but yes, we are on the other side. We're on the dark side.
So it's later in the afternoon for you. So thanks for giving me your time later in the afternoon. I think it's 5 o'clock there, your time, if I'm correct, or somewhere near there. So it's about time for you to be rolling off the clock, as we say here in the US.
Yeah, do you know what, Katy? I don't think I ever roll off the clock. I'm like you. The more I can do for as many people as I can, that process never seems to end. So even when I go on vacation, usually in the middle of the night, I'm normally dealing with something or other. So I don't think my day ever stops. But you know what? That's kind of half the fun. I think that I'm not sure sleep was created for anything other than repairing the body, because it certainly gets in the way of progress some of the time. So I do my best in the time I have.
Yes, you and I are kindred spirits that way, I believe. Absolutely. So let's start by telling our guests a little bit about your background and who you are. And I'm so fascinated to hear how you got into your first career, which is what we have in common, financial services, being a regulator of your industry, and then your second career as well.
Well, thank you. Once again, thank you for having me on your podcast. I know it is a terrific podcast. I've had the opportunity to listen to it as well. So I guess probably the story starts when I'm 9 years old, really. And I'm going to tell you this for a specific reason, because that's my first memory of my childhood. And the reason why it's etched in my memory forever is that was the age at which my father Leo passed away from lung cancer. He'd
No.
been battling a terrible disease for a couple of years, and my mother and father did an amazing job of keeping me and my three siblings kind of safe from the angst and the stress and worry of his illness. And so really it hit me like a truck when my mum came into my school assembly one day when I was 9 and broke the news to me that my dad had died. And in that moment, she said something to me which had a really profound effect. And I know when you and I have spoken, Katy, before about profound change and transformation, that was my epiphany. That was my moment of change, I guess, in my life, because my mother said to me, and I don't think she meant this in anything other than a positive way. She said to me, "You're now the man of the house." And
Oh,
when you're 9 years old and you hear that instruction, because that's what it was to me at the time, you feel enlightened and proud. And I mean, there's all these positive emotions. And at the same time, as I reflect on my life and look at some of the things that I've done subsequently, I realized that it was also a burden. And sometimes the words that we use and the way we communicate things, they kind of have this 180 effect where on the one hand it can be taken positively, on the other hand, you drag it through life. So there I was at the age of 9 with this kind of baggage. And the baggage was that I had to basically take care of my siblings, the youngest of which was 3 at the time. My father, when he passed, was 52. My mum was a widow at 29, so there was quite an age difference. But what
wow.
was really significant about our life in those days was my dad was a really successful restaurateur. My family, the Forte family, so Alessandro Marco Forte, I was named after my grandfather. They came from Italy during the Second World War. They were interned in Scotland, and then when the war ended, they dispersed to various parts of the UK. And it just so happened my father and my auntie ended up in a small town called Weston-super-Mare in the West Country. And that's where I was born. And when my father died, with absolutely no, since we're on the subject of financial services, no financial provision, because I suppose the assumption by many people, financial advisors included at the time, was Leo Forte, very successful guy, lives in a big house, 3 or 4 nice holidays a year, plenty of money, or at least that was the perception. What does he need from us? Why do we need to have a conversation with this guy about, life insurance and investments and tax planning and so on? And to cut a very long story short, within 2 years of my father's death, my mum was bankrupt. The house had gone. The business was teetering on the brink. My auntie had to step in and rescue that from the abyss. And at the age of 13, Katy, I was working 2 hours before school, 2 or 3 hours after school, all my summer holidays. I didn't really have the stereotypical, days in the park kind of upbringing where I'd spend all those waking moments with my friends. Now,
Hmm.
on the one hand, that was quite challenging as a young teenager. At the same time, it taught me a kind of a way through life, a work ethic, if you like. And then despite the fact that I wanted to be everything from an astronaut to a heart surgeon to a policeman along the way, I ended up somehow in financial services. And I think, number one, let's be clear, if anybody is in any way associated with financial services, I probably guess that at the age of 14, you didn't aspire to be a financial advisor. And that's certainly true in my case. But at the age of 21, I'd left university. Academically, I'd done okay. And by that time, my stepfather, Dave, had moved into the family unit. He moved in actually when I was 13. They remarried. My mum remarried. And Dave became very much my kind of guardian angel. He was my best friend in the world. He encouraged me to really believe that I could make my life whatever I wanted it to be. And I learned tons from Dave. He was a really, really special man. So at the age of 21, left university and really was looking for something to do, if nothing else, than to pay off my student overdraft. And a friend of the family had started a financial services business in my hometown and said, frankly, as a favor to my auntie, because he was renting an apartment above her flat, which he owned. And he said, look, I'll take him under my wing for 6 months. I'll help him pay down his overdraft. And then he can decide what he wants to do. So 6 months into an admin-based job, I thought, I'd rather poke my eyes out with a hot, blunt instrument than to carry on doing this. And he approached me one day and said, you know what, I think you'd make a really good advisor, because you're really in tune with people. All the clients that you deal with administratively love you, get lots of compliments. And no, Tony, there's absolutely no way. But anyway, I thought, well, I've still got nothing else to do. Let's give it a try. So he very kindly gave me a number of his clients, and off I went. Calculator under one arm and a rate book, as we called it, under the other. That basically means that you had to calculate all your own insurance premiums. And with no training whatsoever, off I went into the big wide world. And 30 years on, here I still am. After 4 years with Tony, I learned the way. And again, another pivotal moment in my life, because although he was a nice enough guy, he was, very, to use that word again, very stereotypically the worst iteration of a financial advisor you could ever possibly find. He was very much for himself. He had all the trappings of success, but he left a trail of destruction in his wake. And I was the one that was unfortunate enough to have to pick up all the pieces, but built some amazing relationships in the process. So when I started my own business, in the year I got married, had twin children, and bought my first home, all in the same year, which, if you're ever dealing with stress, let me add some perspective to that one.
Wow, that's a busy year.
And started with absolutely nothing other than a dream to create a financial services brand. And I know that is a word that resonates with you, Katy, but to create a brand that was almost the inverse of everything else that I was seeing in the marketplace. And I would take my messages of the way I was developing these unique proposition, and my book actually was written because of the unique selling propositions I brought into my business, where it became a truly holistic 360 client-centric, service-focused, long-term relationship-based business. And I built a service charter because I wanted my clients to know that if we didn't deliver on our promises, they did not have to pay us for the services we provided. And it just blew up. I mean, it just grew exponentially year on year. I was then asked to speak at the regions, the financial services regions of the UK, then invited to the annual conference in London. And then from there, I got discovered, if that's the right word, by an organization called $1 Million Round Table, which in that year I joined as a member. And they said, can you rock up in San Francisco, stand on a stage in front of 8,000 people and deliver your message? And so that's where the speaking career, the kind of the moonlighting activity started. And 20 years plus on, I'm still living the dream, running a very successful financial services business. And I know success is a relative word, but certainly in my own terms, successful. I think successful, if I can just clarify that, not just because it has built commercial value, but because it has allowed me to be philanthropic. It's allowed me to change the lives of many, many people. It led to the book. It's led to the speaking engagements, the fees of which I donate to charity. So I have, the journey has been incredible, and not one part of it was planned. And I'm sorry, that's a very long answer to a very simple question, but I guess I had to give you the background to give you a sense of where it started and where we are now.
No, it's a beautiful answer, and there's so much to unpack there. If I would summarize it, and I'd like to take this and run with it somehow, it sounds like you define success very differently, as opposed to the traditional forms of just commercial success. Success, and I found this to be true of successful entrepreneurs, to use that word again, that success is not just about monetary gain. The other, and I would like for you to expand on this in a minute, if you don't mind. And then it sounds like you never said no to any opportunity, including being head of household at age 9. And you really took that to heart, but you've constantly been head of everything and giving back to people. And so it becomes a stamina issue. But I think when we live a life of purpose, then our stamina is just built in because it makes sense to get up in the morning, right? And so saying yes to those opportunities and defining success in a very different way. And a lot of people would think, oh, wow, it must be rough to have your father pass away. But you were open to the opportunities and to the changes that you were given and to the gifts that you had, and you took that, and that's what we share. You and I have multiple careers. Yours are running at the same time. More respect to you for that, because that's certainly an undertaking. But it says something about the power of vision and purpose for you, and how you want to take that and be a contribution going forward. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's perhaps you should have delivered the answer for me because you did it so much more succinctly than I did. But I kind of deliberately left out part B of my story, which I will tell you briefly, and that will then answer your question, I guess, Katy, which is that it wasn't my father's. I reflect on my life. It was not my father's passing that changed things for me. It was not what my mum said to me all those years ago, far too long ago to remember really, but it wasn't those two events actually. It was what happened when I was 23 years of age. And when I was 21 and joined the financial services business, as we all know, if you're in any kind of business where there's an end-to-end process, whether you're selling a product or providing a service, whatever that might be, the fact of the matter is that I I struggled with procrastination back then. And at the age of 21, I kept making excuses. I listened to the little voice on my shoulder a lot. And that gave me the comfort, no, another word that resonates with you very much. And it allowed me to make excuses, to put off tomorrow what I knew I should really be doing today. And so I listened to that little voice. I became a fully fledged member of the Discouragement Club. That's that group of people that we've all met in life that spend their whole life complaining about everything that's going wrong. And I just put off to tomorrow what I could have done today. And that happened for 2 years. And during that process of procrastination, one of the things that I procrastinated on was the conversation I knew I needed to have with my stepfather, Dave. And he was the head of the household now. He was the breadwinner. My mum was still, a stay-at-home mum. There were now 3 more kids, so there's 7 of us in total.
Wow.
And I'm having this conversation with him in my mind every day for 2 years. And I just couldn't. I don't know why. Looking back, I don't know why I couldn't bring myself to have the conversation. And I guess having analyzed that one to death, I realized that I was focusing on the outcome. And this is a lesson that I try to teach in the presentations I give and just to people in general, is that all too often we procrastinate because we worry about the outcome. We preempt what is going to happen next, when most of the time it probably doesn't work out that way. And we've all been in a situation where we've reflected on something we feared and gone, oh, actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But nevertheless, as a young age, I was 21 going on 12, and I fell into that trap. Kept procrastinating. And then in December 1991, I don't know where it came from. I probably got sick of making the same old excuses. And I garbled out something along the lines of, I know you're going to say no, but my job is to have a conversation. It would be remiss of me not to. I think we should have a conversation about insurance. Expecting Dave to say, look, we don't have very much money. They were living in welfare accommodation, and life was really tough. And to my surprise, he said, yeah, actually, I think you're right. Maybe we do need to have this conversation. Long story short, Katy, he became my very first self-generated client in this business 2 years after I started. And within 2 months, he was dead. He just after his medical examination, he was diagnosed. In fact, we believe that the stomach cancer that he had was already in situ, but they missed it during the medical. And
Wow.
after his diagnosis in early February 1992, he was in hospital. And as he was dying, I was holding his hand one day, and my siblings and I were taking it in turns to spend time with him. And he was a fiercely proud man. I had an amazing relationship with him. We were really, really tight as a unit, he and I. And the last words he gave me, a bit like the instructions my mum gave me all those years previously, was, thank you, son, for what you did for your family. I'm so proud of you. And I remember that conversation. I remember where I was sitting. I remember the smell of the room like it was yesterday. And what was really important about what he said to me, and he gave me a gift that day. He handed me something on a plate that shaped the rest of my life. He said, thank you for what you did for your family. And the important word that I really want to emphasize here, Katy, is did. It's not what you say you're going to do, not what you write on a piece of paper, not what you share as a goal, not something that's going to happen in the future, which very often doesn't happen. It's what you actually do about your dreams, your aspirations, your promises, your objectives. And that was transformational in my life. And everything I've done since has been about action. And that was really the theme that runs through my book. At the end of every chapter, it is no literary classic. Let me be clear about that. But I'm very
I'm
proud of the
sure
fact
it's
it sold,
very good.
500,000 copies across, I don't know, 90 countries in 8 languages.
That's
But
very respectable.
what's important about that book is that at the end of every chapter there is an action plan. So you cannot move to the next chapter until you have taken positive steps to achieve the outcomes from the learnings in that chapter. And that to me is that shaped my life. And so everything that has happened since, I pay tribute to Dave, God rest his soul, because he taught me a very important lesson in those moments before he passed away.
Wow, I'm speechless, which is a beautiful place to leave your audience, but I guess not your interview host. I wish you could have seen me and the listening audience as well. I literally got goosebumps when you said he died. Was it 10 days? I think I stopped processing data a little bit after that, after his exam, and that they literally missed that. So,
Mm.
wow, what a beautiful, profound story. What a gift you were in his life and what a gift he was in your life. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, for really stopping and remembering the people that come and go in our lives, and that everyone has a lesson for us, and that we serve as a lesson for everybody. And I think that's why everyone needs to develop this sense of who they are and their identity, so much so as you've done, as leading by exceptional example. For those of you who are listening, look at these guests and their examples and how they've taken a situation where you and I may frame as untenable, unsurmountable, difficult, and maybe you have a situation that you're saying, well, that was nothing. I have it way worse or much more difficult. But what can you glean from this? Sandra, you so beautifully said, you were told to get into financial services because you were in tune with people and people love you. How do you take advantage of that now, or leverage that? And really, it sounds to me like that's your natural talent. If I was to put you through my assessment and come out on the other side, natural talents aren't about being a good advisor, being good at crunching numbers. It's about the ethereal, as you use that word with me, that people really can't see and touch, but they can feel, and that guides us to want to be your biggest fan and want to follow your lead and learn from you.
Yeah, I thank you. I'm very humbled by what you've just said. I think there are 3 steps to becoming. I talk a lot about becoming iconic, and we can talk a lot about people that we revere in life who've been incredibly successful, or indeed have overcome challenges, have become saints in life, have been hugely philanthropic. Whatever they've done, they fit into that iconic category where instead of them seeking us out with a product or a service, we seek them out. And step number 1 to being iconic, as far as I'm concerned, Katy, is to develop a fantastic personality. You have to have something about you. Now, where it came from in my case, and I'm not saying I've got a fantastic personality, but I think that I have developed a kind of confidence that has come from adversity, where it was either stand up, be counted, do something about it, or die. And I think that having some responsibilities helped. That kind of shaped my role as a leader, I guess, whether it's a leader of my siblings and my family, or in business, or in philanthropy. So I think personality is a very important part of the process. Developing the ability to communicate, to be empathetic. We all have our flaws, and it's a joy speaking to you, on so many levels, because everything you say and do resonates with me. And this is not the big Katy Goshtaspi show, and I'm not expecting it to be the other way around. But that resonance between us, because I think we understand what it takes to be a really good human being. And the success I spoke of earlier, I am by no means super wealthy. I could have been if I had chosen a different path. But success to me is all about legacy. It's about changing lives, making a difference in the world. My wealth will be gone shortly after I leave this mortal coil. On the other hand, a fully funded school in Africa, a well supplying water in India to a slum, an education program that lasts in eternity. That's the kind of legacy that I believe we all have a responsibility to deliver on whatever level we're able to do it. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about time, the ability to just give up some of what we have in whatever way, shape, or form, and give something back. I think of everything that's happened in my life, from my father passing, all came from that, from my stepfather passing. I have gotten way more from life than I've ever given. And I think I give quite a bit, because I do believe that life is a revolving door. It's a cliche, but you reap what you sow. So I think step number one, you've got to be a good human being, or as good as you can be. And I think that is the one aspect of life's journey that rewards us the most, actually. So yeah, that's the bit I really try to encourage people to take a good, long, hard look. What ways can I improve as a person, and what ways can I give back to the people I serve in the same way that they serve me? Because that is what human nature is all about. It's what makes the world continue to spin, I believe.
Well said, my friend. What a beautiful lesson you leave my listeners. Absolutely. So I hope you all took notes on that. Pause it, go back and listen to a summary. And on the note about legacy, I so concur with you. And I'm glad you said what you said at the end, that listeners, this isn't about you having to leave a legacy that people think legacies have to be like my name on the building, right? It doesn't have to be anything like that. I remember when my father passed away, it was my first experience of going to a memorial service and really being truly in shock. No one talked for 3 hours about my father's business or what he did for a living. Everyone just talked about his personality and what message he left them, the audience, with individually. And I think no one's going to come to a memorial service and say anything bad about the deceased, but it was beyond that. It was really about the genuine person, the human, as you say, Sandro, not anything else. And the little stuff is such a big impact. People would tell stories, and I would remember some of the stories about my dad, and I would be like shocked at what an impact that would have on somebody. And so I think in my career and your career, we see that, right? We're fortunate enough to see the impact we have on people, because people will come up and tell me, I heard you 6 years ago speak, or I've been following your blogs and your podcasts for all these years, and one time you said this, and this is what I got, and this is what I did. So we don't know what impact we leave with people and what legacy we leave them with. And I don't think we're meant to, right, Sandro? We just do what we do, and we assume that the right people hear the message and take it and do something good with it and pay it forward. And that's what makes the difference in the world.
Absolutely. I think, looking back at some of the philanthropic stuff I've done, whether it's standing on a stage, writing a book, it isn't, as you say, Katy, about, giving up your life's wealth to accumulated wealth to create a legacy, because there's so many ways you can do it. Giving up an hour a week for some community project, or, standing on a stage, or, in a public place, sharing information on social media. I love it when, and I'm sure you feel the same, when somebody that's been in an audience or has read a book of yours sends you an email out of the blue. You don't know each other. You come from different parts of the world, or different, completely cultural, different backgrounds. And they say something like, something you shared was so profound, it changed my life. That's a legacy. That is a legacy that no one can ever take away. And I guess, when I'm gone, on my CV, I'd love to have, a few more of those. And that's what drives me every day. Don't get me wrong. I'm still taking enough from the world. This is not about me, being subservient to every single person I meet at my own expense. I have a family, and I have responsibilities, and I have a house that I have to run, and all these other things, and staff I employ. But the reality is there is enough time in the day, the week, the month, the year to be able to give something back, even if it's only a small proportion of your time.
Ah, yes, yes. Time is that wicked, cruel joke that I think we take too seriously. And it's actually what drives our stress, I think. And so hearing from guests like you brilliantly how you manage it. And like you said, you're not perfect at it. You have your ups and downs. And I'm sure there's moments where your time is not managed the way you'd like it to, or you try to take on too much. But it is possible for the listeners and to learn from people like Sandro that every little bit counts. And it just has to do with you choosing an intentional path and having a plan, like you said, and going for it. So I'd like to switch gears now and go into part 2 of our conversation briefly. This is the part where the audience, gosh, I can't imagine they could learn more from you than they've already learned, but in a different way, perhaps we'll put it that way, where you, the teacher, the educator, come to the table with something you got on your mind, and we can brainstorm or flip the tables and I can coach you through it and we can talk through it. And that's really very inspirational for the audience to learn you doing all that you do and having amassed as much success as you have. What's on your plate? What do you need support with? What are you brainstorming through? And how can we support you?
Well, firstly, this sounds like the therapy part of the podcast, if I've heard that correctly.
I have been called therapeutic, but I'm not a licensed therapist, full disclosure. It's funny and it's a little bit true, yes.
But do you know what? What's really interesting is that how often, well, first of all, let me say, I really welcome this. I said that tongue in cheek, of course, bit of British humor. Well, humor to me, I've made myself laugh. I'm not sure about anybody else. But, I welcome this bit actually, because how often do we ever take time out to have someone help us? I've spent my whole life helping other people. And, I want to make it very clear that I have learned over the years, and it has been a struggle at times, but I have learned that life's imperfections are what makes life perfect. And I kind of want to repeat that. Life's imperfections are what makes life perfect, because life isn't stereotypically perfect. It is not, whatever we see in somebody else that we kind of feel that we want, when you peel back all the onion layers, it isn't, the grass isn't greener, it isn't as great as we think it is. So I think, to use a word that I've heard you use many times before, Katy, embrace those imperfections sometimes. And because I don't take very much time out for me, I seem to do it a lot for other people. I don't take enough time for me. And I think that's very important. I know you're a great meditator. I'm not so good at that. So a lesson to be learned there. But I've actually, at the age of 52, reached a bit of a crossroads in direct answer to your question. And that crossroads is, and here's my biggest challenge, not just now, but throughout all of my life, because I am so focused on helping other people. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes we worry about the outcome too much, and I am somebody who doesn't often heed my own advice. And what I tend to do is I start to worry about the implications for other people in enacting change. So to give you a specific example, my financial services business right now has grown significantly to the point where I have more clients than I can look after. I'm also getting to a point where there are so many new and exciting things I want to do. I want to have the time and the energy and the space and the bandwidth to do that. So I have to make a fairly significant decision. And that decision is to reduce the number of my clients from about 850 to 30. Now, when we talk about change, it doesn't come any more radical than culling your clientele by about 96%. So, but that's where I am. Why? Because I dreamed when I was 21, I started in financial services. The only goal I set myself at the time, because I didn't know about things like, positive affirmations and all these techniques that I talk about in my book. I had one goal, and that goal was to wake up every morning and have choice as to whether I went to see my clients, did something meaningful in a philanthropic way, write another book, go to my lovely holiday home in Italy, whatever. And I haven't been true to that promise for too many years. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to try and work through this massive process of change where I am fearing the implications for 820 people. And I'm stuck there at the moment, which is, okay. I've got 30 people. They are, super wealthy, or I love working with them. I see another 10-year relationship developing. I see almost a rebuilding of my clientele, but I get to capitalize some of my business, which is important because I can do some stuff then. But I'm really stuck in this dilemma of, yes, it all makes sense for me logically, but emotionally, and this is the left brain, right brain thing, but emotionally, I'm really struggling with it.
Okay, so let's talk through that. Thank you, first of all, for bringing it so honestly to the table. And it really is leading by example. What an inspirational leader you are, that you're willing to like have this discourse with yourself and with me. So for those 96% that you would need to ideally cut, what would it look like if you cut them for them? You tell me.
Well, I have done a deal, let's call it that, with I've kind of formed it was a beauty parade thing. I wanted to make sure that to be true to myself, I had to make sure that wherever I passed them, to whomever I sold them, they had to have a business that was like mine, same values, same client care, similar personalities in the business, so that the transition was that bit easier for my clients. And interestingly, this guy who's buying my clients, called Jonathan, said to me, "You know what, Sandro, I totally appreciate where you're coming from, because I've been very honest with him, and I've been umming and ahhing for about 6 months. This has been going on. And one day I wake up and I'm logically very sure, and the next minute I'm emotionally devastated at the whole thing." And he said to me, the reality is, because he's bought and sold a few businesses, if you sold the business to me on a Friday, by Monday, half of them wouldn't really be that bothered. And when I reflect on that, I think, you know what, on one level, he's absolutely right, because this isn't about me, it's about them. It's about the fact that they have a financial plan. As long as somebody can hold their hand metaphorically on that journey to a positive outcome, that was my promise to them all those years ago.
Yes.
And therefore, through Jonathan and his team, very much bigger business than me, far more resources, we're very much a boutique business, then I still fulfill that promise. And that was a kind of an epiphany that only really occurred these last few days. I had another meeting with him yesterday, funnily enough.
But
And on one level, he's absolutely right. But I still can't help but process well, yeah, that's most of them. What about the rest? They're going to be really sad to see me go, and it's not going to be the same. And then I think, God, that's so selfish and narcissistic, because that's probably not true at all. So I think probably what I'm asking for, since we're having this conversation, albeit on a public podcast, is almost like permission to let go. And I think sometimes in life we kind of need that. We need somebody to put an arm around us and say it's going to be okay, because I've been in that position before, and it's not as bad as you think it is. And it goes back, as I said, to the comment I made earlier, Katy, which is, fearing the outcome is about not wanting to take positive action, which flies in the face of everything I've said so far. But we're talking about me now. We're not talking about anybody else. And it is very difficult to remove those blinkers and that self-doubt. Like I said, probably the best way and most succinct way I can put it is almost seeking permission from somebody to go, you know what, it'll all be okay.
well said. So first of all, I think it's very clear why you are so successful in living in your natural talent at every minute. Because again, remember everyone, natural talent really means that it's inborn, it's ingrained in us. We can't detach ourselves from that. So, you're in tune with people, and people love you, and you love people, and that is part of your natural essence. So it's very common. I see this as a natural byproduct of who you are, that you're living your authentic self. I always say authentic brands win. And so, of course, you would be thinking about this change, and your ego is messing with you, I would say, Sandro. It's saying, stop making it about you, it's about them. But it's a very natural progression of events. And I would say anyone who buys and sells without having these conversations is shortchanging their clients and is completely devoid of emotion and really their humanity. So I think you're going through exactly what everyone goes through. And I say this firsthand. I'm often brought in when people actually go through mergers and acquisitions, and we see this cycle play out for people, even in large, huge organizations, yours being a boutique. But back to you. So I think truly it is fair for you to have these conversations with yourself. And it is, the notion isn't that it's all in or all out. You still have these people as friends in your life, as I see it. I don't see it as black and white. And I know when you're sitting in the driver's seat like you are and saying, I'm an advisor, this is my role. So if I'm not an advisor to them, what am I to them? Well, you're a friend, you're a colleague, you're someone who made sure they're put in good hands to get similar advising, which, by the way, as a human, that rubs us a little the wrong way too, right? And maybe not for you, but I would think it would be totally normal for you to think, can somebody do it as well as I can, right? Because I've done it for so long. And, our clients become our tribe and like our family, and we take care of them. And you're certainly, with your story, you're no exception to that rule. But slowly realizing that, yes, I picked the right person and they're going to take really good care of them, but I'm still in their life. No one is saying that I can't call them and just be friends with them and check in on them, and not try to insert myself professionally where I shouldn't anymore, because Jonathan can take over now, and that's what I'm trusting him to do. So I don't want to shake their trust in him, but from a place of truly, you weren't there just for financial gain for me. I care about you, and I will go forward and care about you. So I would put in a consistent plan to stay in touch with them, not just checking in to see if Jonathan's doing a good job, but that they're a part of your family. I mean, I think when we grow a business, people really do become friends. I always say that. It's amazing to me what percentage of my clients are my friends. And so letting go of that friendship doesn't have to happen just because the business relationship shifts. And so that, I think, should give you a little more to think about, and perhaps, as you so kindly put it, the permission you need to let the relationship evolve. So I just want you to reframe the relationship you have with them. It's still a relationship. No one's dying. Thankfully, it's just evolving, and you're moving on to what your best use in life is now, purpose is, recognizing that you could have done this with them and not had your heart in it going forward. But how integrous was this of you, if that's a word, how much integrity you have to shift gears, leaving them in a good place, taking care of them still at a point where you were giving them 100%, rather than, 5 years, 10 years from now, where you weren't giving them your best because your heart wasn't in it anymore. So recognizing all that truly says you're doing a yeoman's job much better than most people would ever envision doing a transition like this, and you've taken all the right steps and given it all the right thought. And so now the relationship just pivots and changes. And that's the only way I would suggest you need to look at it, for your sake and their sake, and for the success of all involved. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's given me a totally new perspective. Actually, I'd not stopped to consider the relationship aspect. You're right, Katy. Many of those clients have become dear friends of mine. But, professional relationship and personal relationship, two separate and distinct things, and one doesn't have to die because the other one does. So that's a great perspective. And I was just reflecting as I was listening to your wise words, thinking, when I grow up, I want to be just like Katy, because she's always got the right answers to these things.
Thank you, Sandro. Thank you. Anything else on that before we close that part out? Are you complete so far?
I have a new way of looking at it, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad I could be of service. And for the listeners out there, stop and think how you can reframe something for yourself. That I consider that part and parcel of my job, constantly reframing things so people can choose to see things differently for themselves. Where are you looking at something in a way that is not serving your best interest, is not serving the best interest for the highest good? And how can you constantly be reframing things? That's change, and that's growth, and that's brand evolution, as I put it. So 2 final questions for you, Sandro, and then I will let you get back to your very busy and accomplished life. What's next for you is my question, but perhaps you've already answered it in the coaching portion. But what are you going to do next, if not advise, but for that 4%?
Well, yeah, thank you for the question. I'm deliberately trying to create this bandwidth for myself, because I love speaking. Somebody said to me not long ago, every time we talk about you speaking, you come alive, with the words they use. So I kind of know that's where a real deep-rooted passion lies. I'd like to do more of that. I enjoy travel, and I think travel is part of the education of life process. I've learned so much from traveling to wonderful places like Iran, for example, and 81 other countries besides, I'm very proud to say. And I've learned a ton, so I'd like to do more of that. I am a bit like you, manuscripted up on my next book, so that needs to be done. And I know, again, this resonates with you, but a lot around psychology of relationships, business process. So I'm going to do a whole book on the psychology of all things in life and business. And then I've just accepted another board position for a large charitable organisation. I've raised 14 million pounds, which I guess is around
Wow.
$20 million or so over the years. So I want to try and increase that number by, maybe 100%. It'd be nice to do that before I leave everyone. So yeah, still loads of things, and also some of the things I used to really enjoy, like playing golf on a Friday afternoon, which I almost forgot because life got in the way. And I'm very close to my mum, very close to my dear auntie, my late father's sister, and I have this little catchphrase that I use a lot, and I want to make sure I heed my own advice, and that simple way of seeing things is that there are two very important words in life, Katy. One is discipline and one is regret. And I know you're somebody who talks a lot about living in this state of discomfort. And most of my life has been spent in that place. And so this whole idea of, when I talk to people and say, which of these two is painful, discipline or regret? Most people will say instinctively, well, discipline, or they might say regret. But actually, the truth of the matter is they're both really painful. But the one guarantee I can offer to listeners is, if you don't do the first one in life, I guarantee you'll always get the second one. So the question that really I have for everyone is, what can you do to take a positive step forward to remove the potential regret that so many people unfortunately have, where they look back, reflect on their life in those final moments, and start the sentence with the words, I wish.
Yes.
And I just don't want that to happen. So I wanted to take some positive steps now while I'm young enough to check all those remaining boxes, so that I don't look back and say, I wish I'd done this and I wish I'd done that, because that would be the most painful of all outcomes as far as I'm concerned. And I'm sure that resonates with lots of people who are listening.
Absolutely. Well said, my friend. There's a very good example of an intentional plan to pivot and change and staying self-aware. Sandra, you do such a good job of staying self-aware. And here's a person that could just say, everything's going well, why rock the boat? Why change anything? By all accounts, you're successful by anyone's definition of success. And yet you pivot and change because that's evolution and growth. And I really honor you and respect you for that tremendously. And I hope my audience learns and takes away part of that. You don't have to do it Sandro's way or my way or anybody else's way. Please don't, in fact, because that's not authentic and genuine, and only genuine brands win. Do it your way, but take a piece from our chapter and our experiences and do it a little bit at a time. But pivot and go with the flow. And that is what will get you results for sure. And that's what the world needs from you, because you matter. So Sandro, all this wisdom, where can we find you on the web, in bookstores? Tell us, where can we access your wisdom if not on this podcast?
Well, when you have a crazy name like Sandro Forte, the good news is not many other people pinch your handles on social media. So basically, if you stick Sandro Forte, SandroForte, into any search engine, I'll come up somewhere. So my website, Sandro Forte, Twitter, Sandro Forte. The only one that's different, Facebook, Sandro Forte, everything Sandro Forte, apart from Instagram, because somebody did steal my name, and so it had to be the real Sandro Forte, just to convince everyone that I was the real one and not the imposter. So and then the book, Dare to Be Different. I know you can buy it on Amazon. But look, I'm one of these people that I'd love to help anyone listening. As long as you don't break the news to me, you have 10 million people listening to this podcast. If anybody just contacts me and says, please send me a copy of your book, I will gladly package it up, send it at my own cost to wherever you live in the world, if you think it will add some meaningful value to you in your life.
Wow, what a gift you are. There you go, people. Gift giving and receiving in action. What a beautiful gift. I wish we had 10 million viewers. From your ears to God's mouth. We're putting it out there. But Sandro does not have to service all 10 million. And so with that, I'm just so moved, and I'm so grateful for your time and your wisdom, all the way from from the United Kingdom. And I hope all of you listeners took what you could from the brilliance of Sandro Forte. Do with it what you will. Make it your own. Find your greatness, own your greatness, develop it into the great brand that you already are and evolve it and bring that greatness to the world, because we all need you, even though if you're sitting there thinking that there's no hope for you and there's no reason for you to be doing any of this. I'm here to tell you, Sandra is here to tell you you're wrong. We all serve a purpose, and we all have a reason, and we all have a brand. It's there. You just need to buff it up and shine it, sit in the discomfort, and grow and evolve. And you know where to find me as well. And we're hoping that this recording and this podcast was beneficial to you. If it was, please share it with others. Please listen to it again and evolve and grow and have fun with it, most importantly. And until next time, Katy out.